I've lived in El Paso my entire life. My great-grandparents moved from Germany in the 40s, before World War II ravaged the country. They lived in El Paso for the rest of their lives, deciding not to go back to Germany. Since I lived in El Paso, I know every nook and cranny of this blessed city. If you want to embrace art, go to the El Paso Museum south. Want to hike? Head to some of the Franklin Mountains more up north. But when I saw an advertisement for a job listing, there was a restaurant I'd never heard of in my life living here in El Paso. Tex-Mex Cantina. It was more east of the city. This restaurant has been in El Paso for 40 years apparently. As a young 20-year-old man that's lived in El Paso for 20 years, a restaurant that existed for 40 years, I would have heard about it at least once in my lifetime. I would have heard a review from online or friends. I would have seen it leaving the city going to South Padre Island. I would have eaten there in the bundle of restaurants I eat at in El Paso. But no, not a single word of it. One time I was talking to my friends on my way to a party. I brought up the question about the restaurant in eastern El Paso. Have you guys ever heard of or seen the Tex-Mex Cantina restaurant? When I was looking at the job listing, I saw the infamous Tex-Mex Cantina printed in yellow and blue bold letters. Tex-Mex Cantina, help wanted. I was desperate for a job. I got evicted from my house and moved into an apartment complex. My landlord just got out of a divorce and she has been extra catty. Usually when I miss a payment for a day, she would dust it off her shoulders. Ever since her husband left, she would scold me down like I was prey for her monstrous rage. When I saw that there was a job listing for the cantina, I thought I should work there. Since I never heard about it, I could add it to my book of places in El Paso. I ripped the job listing out of the magazine and brought it with me to the interview. I pushed the door open. The smell of food hit my nose. All of a sudden, I became hungry. I snap out of my daydreaming about eating food, then I remember my purpose of arrival. I pull the magazine piece out of my pocket. I walk up to the counter with the lady standing behind it. She was typing at her computer. Hey, I'm here for the job listing. Are you still hiring? The lady looked up at me and stopped typing at her computer. She pulls out a clipboard from underneath the counter and hands it to me. Fill this out. I'll get you an interview with the boss later. I look at the clipboard and scan it up and down. I look back up at the woman and thank her. I walk to an empty table and sit down. Then I start writing my name. I finish some questions like the typical phone number or age and gender. One question stumped me. How much do you weigh? This was a strange question I've never seen filling out a job application. It's strange that they didn't even ask for my resume. Something was odd, but I shrugged it off because I thought it was a new way of getting a job. 150 pounds. The questions started to get odder than the last. What's your height? How fast can you run? But this one question shook me to the core. Do you have any phobias? That question was really odd, but I just continued writing. Heights, spiders, giant crowds. I place the pen back on the clipboard and stand up. I walk back to the counter. I finished filling the application. The woman looked up at me and grabbed the clipboard. I will get you in with the boss. How is June 5th? She places the paper application in a box labeled Forms. June 5th is perfect. I give her a thumbs up and head on my way. On the ride back home, I was thinking about the strange questions on the application. Since it was my first time, I didn't know anything about resumes and applications or how they work. But I don't think those questions were appropriate. I should have asked the lady behind the counter about it. It was June 5th. It was time for me to meet the boss of Tex Cantina for a chance at a job. I drive all the way to East El Paso, pull up in the parking lot of the restaurant, and park. I realize I'm the only person in the parking lot, and the only car parked. I step out of my car, lock it, and walk inside the building. When I walked in, the woman behind the counter immediately recognized me, like I was her family member. Ah yes, Oscar. The woman walks out from behind the counter and leads me into the boss's office. Just wait in here and the boss Molotov will be in shortly. The woman walked out and shut the door behind her. The office was chilly. There were frames with no photos in them hanging on the walls tilted. The door behind me opens and in walks Molotov. We shake hands and he sits down. About 1 hour later, I walk out of the office and say goodbye to Molotov. I got the job and my shift was starting the next night. The interview was more normal than I expected, more normal than the application and me not knowing about this place. Changing my sleep schedule was hell, but I managed to do it. I wake up, get prepared, and head down to the restaurant. Now I was starting my first night shift. I walk in the empty restaurant. The woman behind the counter cocked her head up to me. "Oh, hi." The woman walked out in a hurry without saying anything to me, but then she turned around to me. "I left a list of rules on the counter for you. Good luck." She walked out and into the darkness. I stood there for about a minute until I gained the courage to move. I walked behind the counter and near the woman's computer was the list of rules. "Hello. If you're reading this, you might be a new employee. These are a list of rules for you to follow during your shift. Make sure to read these carefully and play them out perfectly. Step 1. When a man walks in with a plaid shirt, you do not look at him for the rest of the time he is there. Make sure you do not talk to him and give him only a cup of espresso coffee. When he leaves, leave the cup there." The first step was giving me chills. I continued reading the list. Step 2. When the lights flicker, run in the bathroom and hide in the last stall. A shotgun is under the counter, make sure you bring it with you. I read the second step a second time, more chilling than the last. Step 3. If a red Hyundai Elantra pulls in the lot, stare at it until it leaves. Limit your blinking and you'll be good for the night. Step 4. If you see hands coming from the ceiling, save yourself. Use the shotgun. Step 5. If you leave any time before 6 a.m., do not go back home ever again. I throw the list on the counter. My hand slides under the counter. I felt the shotgun. I move my finger to the side, the ammunition. The door opened with the annoying bell that indicates someone entered. I look up, the man in plaid. I cock my head down to the ground and already start making his coffee. I placed the cup under the dispenser and coffee started to come out, filling the cup with dark liquid. I grab the cup, still steaming hot. I walk around the counter and look for feet sitting at a table. I scanned some more. I found shiny shoes sitting at a table. I immediately placed the cup down on the table and walked back to the counter. My neck was getting sore from keeping it bent down, but when the doorbell rang, it was music to my ears. I look up, the man was gone. All that was left was a cup on the table. I remembered that I had to leave it there, so I just ignored it. My phone gets a notification. I pull out my phone and noticed it had a text from Molotov. "You still alive?" When I read that, I snapped. I was already on my way out of the store until I remembered the last step. If you leave any time before 6 a.m., do not go home ever again. That made me stay in my spot. Just having the thought of what will be waiting for me at my apartment, I start to walk slowly back to the counter. I text Molotov back, "Going strong." I sent it with a flexing emoji. He sent a reply back, "What step are you on?" I type out my reply, "The first." Then I sent the text. That was all from Molotov. So far, so good. But the sudden burn out of the light rod made me reach for the shotgun. I yanked the shotgun from under the counter and accidentally dropped it on the floor, which made the shotgun go off. A loud bang filled my ears. Then I noticed blood on the floor. I looked at the direction of the bullet's travel, and a carcass of something was just lying there dead. It was very indescribable. The light started to flicker like a strobe light. I quickly grabbed the shotgun and book it to the bathroom, then dip into the last stall. I could hear wet footsteps slapping outside the bathroom. Footsteps coming closer and closer. Then the bathroom door opened. I cocked my shotgun and aimed it towards the stall. The flickering stopped. I slowly stepped out of the stall. I could see wet, black footsteps leading towards the stall I hid in. I poke my head out of the bathroom door, wetter footsteps. I make it back to the counter and put the shotgun back under the counter. This night was an affliction, a night nobody would expect. After reading the list, I didn't expect anything more. But when I snapped out of my stupor, in comes the red Hyundai Elantra. Thinking back on the list, I stared at the car, trying my hardest to limit my blinks. That was almost impossible. A human blinks 12,000 times a day. I would have at least added to the 12,000 times at this hour. The car pulled into one of the parking spots, then just sat there. I stared to the point where my eyes became heavily bloodshot. The car shut off. My eyes started to automatically squint. I tried my best to keep my eyes open, but I failed. In one of my blinks, the car disappeared. I sigh in relief. My phone gets a notification, a text from Molotov. "I'm gonna assume you finished the last step. Good job. You can leave now." I sighed in relief. I started my walk towards the exit. I opened the door and stepped out. Then I realized the last step. If you leave any time before 6 a.m., do not go back home ever again. I looked at my foot, stepped outside. Most of my body was out of the building. I look at the clock on my phone, 5:59 a.m. I left the building before 6 a.m. Now I can't go home.
You're not afraid of the dark, are you?